Donald Trump has reclaimed the White House. He has won a second term in the U.S. presidency. He crossed the 270 magic number with his Wisconsin victory, marking one of the greatest political comebacks in American history.
That's right, Molly. In fact, Trump has left his Democratic rival Kamala Harris in a fiercely contested election with 277 electoral votes. With the swing state victory, he added 10 more electoral votes to his kitty.
And the battleground states of Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin proved to be pivotal in Trump's road to victory.
So far, Trump has won 4 out of 7 swing states, while he is leading in 3 others. The biggest turnaround for Donald Trump has been Pennsylvania, one of the key battleground states. Trump has claimed Pennsylvania 19 electoral votes there and reversing the state's previous alignment with the Democrat Joe Biden, who had wrestled it out from Trump's grasp in 2016 while reclaiming the blue wall.
In fact, Trump has won 10 electoral votes in Wisconsin, and with this win, Trump broke the streak for Democratic presidential candidates who had won the previous 7 elections. In the year 2020, President Joe Biden flipped Wisconsin back to blue by less than a point after Trump narrowly won the state in 2016.
Another key takeaway was Trump's flip in Georgia. Trump has won the hotly contested battleground state and its 16 electoral college votes. Trump secured 50.9% of the vote, while Harris took 48.4%.
Remember, Biden had left Trump behind in Georgia in 2020 by fewer than 12,000 votes, the first time a Democratic candidate had won the state since Bill Clinton in 1992.
And in North Carolina, Donald Trump secured a victory by a margin of a little over 3% vote percentage against Harris. Back in 2020, Trump edged out Joe Biden in the state in 2020 by over a point. Now, as the counting of votes is underway in 3 swing states, trends suggest that Trump lead in Nevada, Arizona and Michigan.
So for more on all of this, with us on the broadcast is our correspondent Siddhant Sibal, joining us from Washington, D.C. We also have with us James J. Marlowe. He is a U.S. political analyst and a defense analyst, an expert on West Asia, joining us from London. Thanks very much for being here. First to you, Siddhant. Give us a sense of what the mood has looked like over the last few hours. This, of course, is a victory that has far-reaching implications for America's relationship with a number of countries, particularly India as well.
Well, yes, it has been a long night and it will be a long day as well. It's just 7 a.m. here and America has woken up to a new dawn. Now, essentially, that's the view. We will be going to White House very soon, but essentially, big implications. Everyone is counting how not only to deal with Trump presidency, but also its impact. Now, as you mentioned about India, India, of course, has had a good relationship under the Trump presidency. In fact, it was under the Trump presidency that Quad was revived, and it was under Biden administration that it was taken forward. But coming to Trump presidency, in fact, Donald Trump, during his campaign trail, had a lot of positive comments about India, about Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and essentially about how he sees India. But he also termed India as tariff king, and that can be a negative news in terms of essentially imposition of tariffs on Indian goods. He has been saying a lot about the Harley Davidson case, where tariffs were high on Harley Davidson bikes, and Trump claims that he was responsible in reducing that. But all in all, for the region, for Pakistan and Bangladesh, it could be a problem. Bangladesh, we know that Donald Trump had raised the issue of the Hindu minorities coming under attack, while in Pakistan it was the issue of terrorism. So a lot of things on the table, and this is something that globally is being watched. But here in America, as we start a new day, we'll be speaking to a lot of people and get their view as to how they see the Trump presidency.
Siddhant, we've been speaking to our reporters from the United States, our reporters who are based over there. You go there with fresh set of eyes. Just as you see around you, what is the ground reality that you observe or notice? How is the American population reacting to a Trump win?
Well, first, it's a very divided country. You are right when you say that I have come with fresh pairs of eyes because I can see what perhaps Americans won't be able to see. I spoke to a lot of people in the last few days, and I spoke to the Trump supporters and Kamala Harris supporters, both of them in their own echo chamber. But it is clearly a very divided country. Now, when it comes to the Trump presidency, it's a clear division when it comes to the sentiment, the media here. In fact, a certain segment of media was quick to announce his victory, while the certain segment of media is yet to announce or support that presidency of Donald Trump. So a divided country. In fact, Kamala Harris hasn't even conceded her defeat. And this is something that we'll get to know in next few hours. But we have been also talking to Indian Americans, their role as well. In fact, during that important and historic event in Florida where Trump declared his victory, there was one Indian American at the stage. She was Usha Vance, the wife of the next vice president of this country. So Indian Americans have always been in the game, whether it's the Republicans, the Democrats. Of course, Kamala Devi Harris has Indian origin, but she, of course, did not emphasize during her campaign trail. And this is something that hasn't been liked very much by the members of the Indian American diaspora. So all in all, an important day in terms of not only the country, but also globally as well.
Right.
Right, we're leaving it there for the moment. Siddhant, thanks very much for joining us in the broadcast with those inputs. James J. Marlowe, thanks very much for standing by with patience. Coming straight to you to talk about what a Trump presidency will mean for West Asia. Is it positive news for the region? Do you see things dramatically changing, if at all?
Well, I do think there is a breath of fresh air across the world. And I should say that I should hold my hand up and say that I got it wrong. I've been saying for the last 48 hours that I did not think there would be a decisive decision made through the night. And I was quite amazed. In fact, I'm amazed. I still look fairly okay at these hours later on in the day. And of course, as you know, I'm in London. I actually thought that the 7 states would actually take a couple of days or even a couple of weeks to decide what the overall result would be because of legal challenges, because of recounts, and because either side would not concede. But it was very early on that Kamala Harris and the Democratic team realized that they were not getting the support that they expected to get. And it wasn't just that the polls were wrong, which some networks are actually saying. I think a lot of people made their decision when they went into the actual voting booth. They still didn't know who that they were going to vote for. And remember that they had a very, very long ballot paper because it's not just the presidential candidates they're voting for. They're also voting for Congress people. They're voting for the people in the House. They're voting for a senator or a governor, or in some cases in 10 states, they were voting on abortion laws. And it was quite common for some people to decide to put their vote with Donald Trump, the Republican candidate, but yet go for their local Democrat candidates within their own state. And this confused the Democrats. And the worst thing that Kamala Harris did was her fans, her grassroots, her party helpers, her supporters who'd done so much work over many, many weeks, knocking on people's doors and giving up so many hours of their own time for free. They were standing there. They expected her at least to come out and thank them for all the work that they did. And she didn't come out. They just decided, we're going to close it down right now. They turned off the lights in Washington, D.C. at their so-called victory headquarters, and the people left with their heads down. And I think that was very disrespectful on the part of Kamala Harris.
James, you pointed out how a Trump presidency would usher in an era of fresh air as regards the conflict in West Asia. However, allow me to juxtapose that with the fresh spate of strikes that Renana has witnessed from the Hezbollah rockets just a short while back. So where exactly are we going to really see this conflict? How do we see it shaping up when we're speaking about the ground reality?
So you're referring to Ramallah, which is just north of Tel Aviv, in, of course, Israel. And it was about 3 hours, maybe 2.5 hours, that Hezbollah once again opened up a barrage of rockets. Sirens went off across the state of Israel, literally across. And the reason for that is because that sometimes there's debris that drops down. It's not clear where these long-range missiles are going to land. So therefore, the sirens go off. Everyone goes into their safe rooms or into the bunkers. And as we saw in Ramallah, parts of it can still actually fall out of the sky. And you're probably referring to that picture that I tweeted out a short while ago that fell into a car in Ramallah, which is just north of Tel Aviv. Look, I think the following. I think that we went wrong under the Biden administration. Firstly, the foreign policy under the Biden administration went all wrong after the Afghanistan disastrous pullback. Yes, Donald Trump was planning to pull back as well, but not at that specific time, not giving their allies 2 days' notice, and then leaving Americans behind, and also those vital Afghan people who did so much for the Americans working in their consul and working as translators. Them and their families got left behind. Totally wrong. And as a result, Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, they took advantage. I mentioned Russia. They took advantage of the situation. Even with regard to the Middle East war, Israel and Gaza, you had Joe Biden, who was actually saying that Israel should not go into that southern city in Gaza called Rafah, or Rafah in English. And they were outside for 3 months. The Israelis knew that hostages, 101 hostages, many of them now dead, were in those tunnels and are still in those tunnels. But the American administration said, don't go in there. I think if it was Donald Trump, he would have said, get the job finished as quick as you possibly can. I don't like war, he would say, and he's saying that many, many times. Get it done, finish them off, and let's get back to peace. And that's exactly what I think he's going to be saying in Lebanon as well, with the bombing taking place in Lebanon. He's going to be saying, get the job done. In the last 6 months, the Israelis have taken out more of America's most wanted in the last 6 months than America have done in the last 20 years. And the Americans behind the scenes are actually saying, thank you very much. But under the administration of Joe Biden, they couldn't say it out loud because they feel that it wasn't the right thing to do. I think it's time to take the gloves off and say what it is that you want to say and get these wars done with and finished with, and let's get back to a peace process.
I was just coming to that, when we draw a contrast between a Biden White House and a Trump White House, the question on everybody's mind, specifically talking about the wars, is that what does Trump have that Biden didn't? What, according to you, is that key differentiator that will actually possibly put an end to the conflicts?
Well, I think there's many things. Firstly, number one is that nobody really knows what's going on in Donald Trump's mind. And Putin doesn't like that. The Chinese leader doesn't like that. The North Korean leader doesn't like that. The Iranians don't like that because they just don't know how to play him. With regard to Putin, he knew that Joe Biden wasn't going to do anything when he invaded Ukraine. And I was talking about that on a British network for about 6 months before it happened. And I predicted it was going to take place simply because of the Afghan pullout. And America was seen as weak. I think now that Donald Trump is back into the White House, America, hopefully, and we don't know, I admit we don't know, but hopefully will seem much stronger. Now the Saudis will actually feel a little bit more comfortable because they were feeling a little bit isolated and started to make relations again with Iran, their enemy. And so did the UAE and Bahrain, because they just didn't know where America was going to stand. And I think things are much clearer right now. Of course, Trump is going to focus on America first. He won the election because he made it very clear, immigration and getting inflation down. There's a lot of Americans, Democrats, who say that they can't afford their bills, their grocery bills, the petrol, the gasoline going into their cars. And they've taken a chance on Donald Trump. He will sort out America first. And then afterwards, he believes that there's a good chance to get a deal between between Saudi Arabia and Israel to bring them into the Abraham Accords. And if that happens, that's fantastic. But you can only do that once you get rid of those who totally oppose the state of Israel, like Hamas and Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and many of the other Shiite groups in Iraq and Syria.
James, let me just draw your attention back to the domestic issues that have been addressed in this presidential election, especially as regards the state of Wisconsin, which has pretty much been the deciding state for Donald Trump's win. The state typically has had immigrants, the working class, that has probably moved to the state. The state turned red after NAFTA by Bill Clinton. How do you think Trump and his policies, the fact that he's appealed to the working class this time around, how do you think he will shape his policies around the working class so as to enable more jobs for that sector of the demography?
Well, I'm not a spokesperson on behalf of Donald Trump and on behalf of the Republican Party, but I would say the following, and that is that when he came into power in 2016, he promised that there would be jobs for those within the black community, whatever that means, those within the Puerto Rican community, fixing those factories, getting the factories back to work. And the reason why that they stopped working is simply because there was a lot of cheaper goods coming in from overseas, namely China. And he sorted that out with tariffs on China. He says he's going to do something very similar. Of course, if it's not worth the American businessman to open up his factory and produce something because people can buy in the American shops much cheaper from a product from China, then the factory is going to close down. If Donald Trump sees that as a business person and stops these imports, these cheap imports coming in from abroad, and then focuses on American products, then you're going to create more jobs, which is what he did in 2016. And of course, he says he's going to do this time. We'll have to wait and see whether that's possible. But those are the jobs for all sorts of working class people, whether they be black, white, yellow, Puerto Rican, or whatever it is. Those where that's unemployment can go down. In terms of actually keeping the petrol prices down and gasoline prices down, well, he said he's going to focus on the oil wells inside of America and not bring it in via abroad. And one of the reasons he says he's going to do that is because there's more oil inside of America than there is in Saudi Arabia and other countries. And he said, why should we import it in when we've actually got it in our own country? Let's start working on our own country. And some people have raised a question about this, saying it's not right for the environment. He's going to put the environment aside to focus on American jobs and focus on the economy, which is what he got voted in for.
All right.
Right. James J. Marlowe, thanks very much for being here on the broadcast and sharing those perspectives.
Thank you.